So my name's Elaine Wright. I work for SEWBReC, or the South East Wales Biodiversity Record Centre in the long form. And I'm going to talk to you today about how you can get involved in wildlife recording and why it's such a great thing to do. It's quite a big topic to cover. So I've just broken it down here exactly what I'm going to be talking about. So I'll briefly introduce what SEWBReC actually is. I'll explain what a wildlife record is and why you should do it. And then I'll go through quite a possibly intense training, just showing you how to actually do it. So I'm just going to go through the different ways in which you can do it electronically. But this will be recorded and will be available as a YouTube link. So if you lose track or you want to go back and watch again, you will be able to. And then at the end, we'll have any questions. So if you want to ask a question, you can type it into the chat, and then we'll try and deal with them all at the end, unless you have something really urgent that you want to ask during. So first of all, what is SEWBReC? You may have heard of us. We've been around for a few years now. We're a local environmental record centre. And that means that we gather together wildlife data from lots of different sources, like wildlife trusts, individual recorders, councils, Natural Resources Wales. We gather all of their wildlife data together, put it into one place, and then we provide it out to people making decisions locally and also to researchers, students, people like that. Another big part of our work is supporting individual recorders, so the people that are actually out there creating the data. That might be with technical assistance, running events, providing grants in some cases. So just whatever we can do to support the people out there making the data. And we also encourage and celebrate recording in our area. So organising events such as this one helps to encourage recording. And we also have things like a newsletter and an annual conference to really showcase the work that's being done by people in our areas doing recording. We have an office in Talbot Green, so just outside Cardiff, in Rhondda and Taff. But we cover all of Gwent and Glamorgan. Those are the two vice counties. And that runs from Monmouth in the east to Gower in the west, and from the coastline up to the edge of the Brecon Beacons National Park. And we have currently got 7 staff members, but we've got 2 more starting next week, so we'll soon be 9. So that doesn't sound like a huge amount, but some record centres only have 1 or 2 staff members, so we are quite large in the scheme of things. And just to give a bit more context on how the system works, so we're down here in the southeast. We're one of 4 record centres that cover all of Wales. We have West Wales, Mid Wales and North Wales as well. And we work together in a consortium to do national projects, and we just get together and work really well with the other record centres in Wales. And then on the right hand side, you can see that we're part of a larger network that covers all of the UK. So there's one in Northern Ireland that covers the whole area, and then some smaller ones in lots of England, not quite such good coverage in Scotland, but I know they're working on that. So yeah, we are one of a national set of organisations. So what actually is a wildlife record? So you might have gone for a walk of an evening and seen something interesting like this lovely toad that I saw last year, and you're wondering how you make your sighting into a record. And in order to do that, we need to capture 4 essential pieces of information. So we need to know what you saw, so a common toad in this case, where you saw it, so the location name and also a grid reference, but I'll talk a bit about those more later. We need to know when you saw it, so the full date ideally, and then who saw it, so the full name of the person that saw it. So once you have those 4 pieces of information, you have a record. And you just need to enter it into a system or capture it in some way in order to pass it on. There are some optional extras you can add to a record if you want to include more information. So you can add a photograph, in this case I would have done. You can add things like the gender, the life stage, so say this was toad spawn, I might make a note of that, the habitat that it was found in, and also behaviour, so things like breeding behaviour can be really useful to know, because obviously the species is using the site in a different way in that case, so it might need an extra level of protection. So why should you get involved in wildlife recording? It's a brilliant thing to do, and I'm going to explain some of the reasons why. So it's really useful in lots of different ways, and in one of them is in planning decisions. So for some councils, not currently Cardiff, but for a lot of other ones in our area, we do provide a planning service. So we'll get a list of all the planning applications that have been registered in a week, and we will run that through our database and create a report like this. So the ecologist or the planning department will be able to see exactly what species have been found there and make decisions about whether more surveying is needed, whether the site is just unsuitable for development, whether mitigation is needed. So we just provide information that helps them to make those decisions. It's also really useful for site managers. So this is an example of a product that we provide to the wildlife trusts. South and West Wales and Gwent Wildlife Trusts both get this service. So you can see on the left-hand side, this is an outline of one of their reserves. And within that, they have these little dots, and they can click on them to see a big list of all the species found there. And they also get that more traditional report with the full information, like names and dates, etc. And they can use this information to work out site management. So they might be deciding their mowing regime, bringing grazers onto the site, planting a hedge, building a pond, whatever they're thinking of doing. Using this information just make sure they're not accidentally harming anything, and that they are actually managing for the best of the wildlife found on site. And it's really useful for researchers. So I always like to shoehorn in some crickets if I can. So this magnificent looking creature on the right hand side is the Rose's bush cricket, my favourite insect, a lovely thing, I'm sure you'll agree. It first arrived in Wales in 2008, and since then it has been slowly colonising across the country. So you may have noticed this map on the left is actually a GIF, so it's going through year by year and showing the new sites that the cricket has been found on. So using this sort of year by year or annual data, researchers can look at questions such as, is this related to climate change? Is it to do with the mean temperature of that year? What is actually going on with species colonising in this way? And that's just one example of lots of different research questions that can be answered using the biological records that are created by recorders. But maybe you're not feeling that altruistic, you're not too bothered about how the data is going to be used, and you want to know what's in it for you. And there are actually many personal benefits as well to doing wildlife recording. So one of the huge things I find personally is that it's a big learning experience. So generally speaking, you'll start recording one thing. It might be that you're interested in birds and you want to start recording birds, but you'll kind of get bit by the bug, so to speak, and want to start doing more and more things. And during that process, you'll learn stuff about species ecology, species identification, habitats, lots of different things you'll learn as you go through that process. This photo here is from a course that we ran at the National Museum of Wales a couple of years ago, which was looking at earthworms. So this was quite a hardcore sort of subject to look at. You can see here they're all using microscopes. You have to take a specimen and do dissection and stuff to do earthworms. But even if you don't go to that extreme, there are lots of groups and lots of ways in which you can learn during recording. It's also a really satisfying hobby if you're at all numbers orientated like myself. This screenshot here is SEWBReCORD, our online recording database, and it's a way you can monitor your progress, how much you've recorded, the different groups that you've done and so on. And you can really see a visual representation of how much you've progressed, and just feel that you are, you know, learning and contributing, and it's quite a visual thing as well. I think it's a nice, satisfying way to see how you've progressed. There are also health benefits to recording. So we all know about the physical and mental health benefits to getting outside in nature. And wildlife recording just gives you another reason or an excuse, if you need one, to get out there and enjoy the Welsh weather, either whether it looks like this or it's pouring with rain. There's always something to record. And a really nice aspect of wildlife recording is that it does come in with a built-in community. So it might be that you do enjoy looking at earthworms under a microscope on your weekends. It can be quite difficult to find someone who shares that enthusiasm with you in day-to-day life. So when you start recording, you do connect with other people in the community. Maybe they don't do earthworms, but they might be looking at bugs or something, and you can learn from each other and inspire each other and just sort of meet like-minded people. This photo is from a BioBlitz we ran in, I think it's Dare Valley Country Park a few years ago. Unfortunately, we've not been able to have any field events for the past couple of years, but we are hopeful they will restart next year. And in the meantime, we do have an online community that you can join. We've got a Facebook group, for example, where you can talk to other recorders directly, ask for help and share your sightings. So now I'm going to talk a bit about how to actually do wildlife recording. Again, this is quite a large subject in itself, so I'm just going to I've just broken down what we're going to do exactly. I'm going to show you SEWBReCORD, so that's our website specifically for recording. I'm going to show you a video of the app version, so if you prefer to use your mobile phone, you can do that for recording. I'll briefly go over some other recording routes that you can go for. I'll go over some potential hurdles that new recorders often find. And then finally, I will showcase Aderyn, which is our data output website, basically, where you can see what other people have been recording. So first of all, I'm going to show you SEWBReCORD. So I'm going to swap over to my other screen, which is that one. Actually, I will log out so you can see what it looks like when you're not logged in. There we go. So you can see up here the web address is SEWBReCORD.org.uk. This is a iRecord product. You might have heard of iRecord. It's the national recording website. This is just the South East Wales version. You can use iRecord, the national version, if you prefer. They're very similar. And we just created this one to encourage recording locally, basically, but the data goes into the same pot. So when you first arrive, there's some lots of words on the left-hand side, but the first thing you'll need to do is create a new account. So this is very similar to most websites nowadays. Hopefully SEWBReCORD's going to behave for me. There we go. So you just fill in your email address, pick a username. You can put a photo of yourself on if you want. I don't think anybody really does that. Then you fill in your full name, so your first and last name, have a read of the T's and C's, agree to them, and then create a new account. And then you'll get sent an email with a link in, and that will allow you to log in for the first time. So I've already got an account, obviously, so I'll just click log in. And this brings us to the home page. So this shows you on the left-hand side just a little table of the most recently added records by anyone who's been using the system. Looks like Andrew Lucas has been putting lots of records in. And then a map of those as well, so showing where they are in the context of the SEWBReC's area. And there are quite a few different menus along the top. I'm just going to show you 3 things this evening because I don't want to overwhelm you with information. So the first thing that you're most likely to do, want to do is to enter a casual record. So we'll click on that. So this is if you've been for a walk and you've seen a toad, for example, and you just want to enter that one thing, this is how you would do it. So it's going to ask us the 4 essential parts. So who, what, where, and when. So the first thing it asks us for is the when. And you just click on there and it brings up a calendar like this. So you can pick a date, go back in time, whatever. Just pop in for Monday. It's got the who already filled in, so that's my name. You can change it. So for example, if your neighbor or a relative have told you something that they've seen, you can enter the record on their behalf. You just change the name here. That's perfectly fine to do. And then the next thing it wants to know is the what. So behind this sort of cell, there's a full species dictionary for all of the UK species. So when you start typing, it will bring up a list of options for you. Oops, I misspelled buzzard. And then you can pick from the list. So I want to enter a buzzard and make sure it's the right one and just click on it, and that's brought it through for me. Then there are a couple of optional things that you may want to fill in. So certainty, if I wasn't quite sure if it was a buzzard or not, I could indicate that here. I can fill in the sex, the quantity, the life stage. So if I'd found a nest, I might say that there was eggs. And you can put in the identifier. So if somebody else helped me with the identification, say I put a picture of the buzzard on Twitter and someone replied and told me what it was, I would just put their name in here. It just acknowledges that you've had assistance with the record and gives them some credit, basically. Then the next thing you can do is to mark the record as sensitive. So say, for example, I had found a buzzard's nest. I would consider that to be sensitive information because it could be misused by people. Because as we saw when we logged in, you do see other people's records and other people will see your records. So if you don't want someone else to be able to find that species or that nest site, for example, you can just click that the record is sensitive and then choose how to blur it depending on how sensitive you feel that it is. We'll still get the full details at SEWBReC and it will be used in decision making at the full resolution. It just won't be visible to the general public. And this one wasn't actually sensitive, so I'll untick that. At this point, you can add a photograph. So you just click on add photo and then navigate within your system to wherever you keep your photos, or you can drag and drop them in there if you want to. And then the final one of the final things we need to do is put in the where. So you might have noticed that for the who, what, where, and when, there are these red stars because they're essential pieces of information. These don't have the red stars because they're optional. So for the location, there are a few ways you can find a location. So this is sort of a standard Google map. And you can click on it to find anywhere you want and just keep clicking down till you get to the right location. So say you're in Cardiff, you want to enter a record, you just keep clicking down until you find the place that you want to be. And you'll see here that it's created the grid reference for me. I've not had to do any work to get to there. The other way you can find a location, delete that, is to use the search bar. So search for actual home village, just click search. And we can see here it's brought us through to Tom Revel, and I can navigate again to find the actual location. There's my house. There we go, that's my car. So that's full. Also given us a grid reference. I don't need to do anything to change that. I just need to type in the name as well. So we would say don't put your full address, so not your house number, but your street name is probably fine. Or you can just put your town name if you're more comfortable with that as well. Then you can add a habitat if you want to. This is optional. We don't really use it at SEWBReC, so I don't really fill that in myself. And then you can add a comment if you want to, just giving a bit of context. So I'll just say this is my head. There we go. And click submit. And then you'll get this message saying, thank you for submitting your record to SEWBReCORD. And my record has now gone off to the database. So I'll just run through again and show you how quick it is once you get started. So I'll pick the date, leaving the recorder name. I'm filling in their species name. So let's go for red kite. Pick it from the list. I don't want to add any other details or photographs, so I just go down here and I'll put Tom Revel. And you'll see there that I had a site name saved, so it's pulled me to a different location. So that's quite useful if you commonly record in your garden. You can just put your garden name, whatever you've given it, and it will pull you down to the right grid reference. So I'm going to say I had a red kite in my garden as well. Submit that. And again, it's gone straight into the database. The next thing I'm just going to show you is how to enter a list of records. So again, we're looking at the record column and then the second one down. It will just check that you've not accidentally navigated away without saving, but we've sent that record in, so we're happy to leave the page. So this would be, for example, if you've done a moth trap in your garden, you want to enter a list of records, or you've done a list of birds for a particular date. You can enter them all in at the same time. So it's asked us for the when, it's got the who there, and then we're looking at the what. So if I enter a list, so let's say bird there, robin. So robin's quite a good example of how you have to be careful with picking your species from the list, because it actually has a fly and a couple of plants before you actually get to the bird. So just make sure that you're picking the right one from the list. Some species you'll see have this little triangle. That's just a warning to say that they're a bit more difficult to ID. So for this one, it says potential identification issues for less experienced bird watchers or in certain conditions. So it's just kind of a note to you that perhaps if you're not that expert, you might need to ask somebody else or reconsider entering the record. There is like a numbering system. So if I just say that I've got a grey dagger. So this is a type of moth where you have to dissect it. So it says it's got a number 4, so it's higher than a 2. It's more difficult to ID. It says species that can only be identified following critical assessment, often involving dissection and examination of genitalia. A specimen should be retained for confirmation. So basically, if you're getting a 4 and you haven't done a dissection, or you're not a real expert, then maybe just check it with an expert before you enter the record. So get rid of that dagger. So if we've entered the list of species, you can, for each individual one, add that sort of certainty, quantity, sex, stage, identifier, comment, photograph information if you want to. And then the last thing it asks for is the where. So you can see the map is more zoomed out here. So if I again put my home address, click on that from the list, and it's pulled me right down to my garden there. And you just click on the red square to pull the grid reference through there. And I won't put any comments or habitat, but you can do that. So it would be comments that apply to all the species rather than the individual ones. So we hit submit. And it says, thank you for submitting your records to SEWBReCORD. So they have gone into the database. And the final thing I'm just going to show you on SEWBReCORD is how you can actually look at your records on here. So we go to the Explore tab and click on My Records Full. Again, it's checking that we don't want to leave this page. This can take a little while to load because it is pulling in a lot of data. Hopefully it is going to work for us. That one's loading. Here we go. Okay. This normally doesn't take quite this long. It's just that I'm quite a prolific recorder, so I have a lot of data that it's trying to pull through. Here we go. So these are all of my records that I've entered on my system. And we can see here it's visualized for me all the different locations I've recorded. I've done some recording in England as well, so it's sort of squares all over the place, basically. Then we can scroll down, we have a list of all those records. And down at the bottom, it has a total, so 11,376 records. You can download this report, so if you ever want to look at your records in Excel or whatever, you can download it and view it that way. Then you can also look at the list of species that you've recorded. So I can see all the different things I've recorded. Again, we can go down the bottom and see the total, so 1,759 different species. You can click on any heading to change the order. Say, for example, I want to see what I've recorded the most. Blackbird and robins, no surprises there probably. Most people probably have birds as their most recorded things. It's nice to see dark bush cricket up over 100 though. But the other thing you can do as well as just sort of having a play around and seeing what you've done is to actually amend records that you've entered in the past. So we can see here the little list of birds I've entered so far in the course. So say I've decided now that my buzzard was wrong and I want to change that. I can do that by going over here to the right and clicking on the little pencil to edit the record. So here we can see the record I entered earlier, and I can change anything I want here if I want to say that it was a different date or that the species was changed. So I'm going to change this and say, oh, it's a honey buzzard. That would be exciting, wouldn't it? And we can see here they're pretty rare and pretty difficult. It's got a number 3 next to it. So I can just change that there. Don't want to change anything else. So I'm just going to hit submit. And then if we go back to my records full, it should load a bit quicker the second time. There we go. We can see that my buzzard has now become a honey buzzard. The other thing you can do here is to delete a record. So that wasn't really a honey buzzard. So I'm going to edit it again. And we can just scroll down the bottom and hit delete. And it will be gone. So if you ever make a mistake or you've changed your mind about something, it's really easy to just go in and change it. So you don't need to worry about typos and stuff if you are inclined to do so. So we can see the buzzard has gone now. So that's SEWBReCORD. There are other things you can look at on here, lots of other menu options, but I'm not going to go through them. We do have some YouTube videos that you can watch if you ever want to learn more about what you can do on SEWBReCORD. So I'll just pop it back over to my presentation. And the next thing we're going to look at is the app. So this is, again, an iRecord product. So it goes into the same place as data that you enter on SEWBReCORD. It's just handy for on the go because you can do it on your phone really easily. And it's good for Android and Apple products, and it's free to download. So you would just go and search for LERC Wales App in any of those playing app stores. So I'm going to share a video to showcase this one. Hoping that will work. There we go. So this is just a screen share of a video that I made on my phone, so you can see what it looks like on there. So this is what the app will look like when you download it. It's called the LERC Wales App. So we click on it first time we log in. It has this welcome screen. You can choose your language. So I chose English, but it is fully bilingual if you're a Welsh speaker. And then you click on Get Started. At various points, it will give you these little tips. You just say, OK, got it, to get rid of them. And the first thing we want to do is to log in. So we go to menu down here. Well, the first thing we want to do is register, sorry. So you will have to register separately from SEWBReCORD, but make sure you use the same email address for both so they're linked, your accounts will be synced basically. So again, you fill in your email, your first and last name, pick a password, agree to the T's and C's, and then hit register, and that will send an email to your account that you can click on and get started with. So I already have one, so I'm going to log in. fill in username and password. And we can see here that it's got my name, so I've signed in correctly. And then we just go back out to the main menu. And to add a record, we use this little green button with the plus sign in it. Sorry, it's quite difficult to narrate a video. I'm not sure why I paused here, but I will click on this in a moment. There we go. So the first thing it asks you for is the what. So you start typing in a species name, and again, it's got that national dictionary behind the scenes that it's pulling from, and it will give you all the different options. I'm entering an ivy-leaved toadflax in this example. So you find it on the list and you just click on it. The other great thing about the app is that it will actually use your GPS and your phone if you allow it to. So if you're happy with that, you just click allow. And you can see here we have a draft record, and we just click on that to fill in the rest of the details. So it's got the what, and it's got part of the where. So it's got the grid reference, it's got that from the GPS, but it still needs you to fill in the name. So I think we'll click on this first. There we go. And it brings up a map, so you can check that you are happy with the location. And if you are, you just type in the name up here. So here's me typing in my street name. There we go. And for each piece of information, you click this little arrow to take it back through to the actual record. Then on the when, it defaults to today's date, but you can change that. You just click through on there and scroll through to change the date if you want to. And then click OK and back out again. Then you can add a comment. So maybe breeding information or whatever. Just free format, whatever you want to type there. I didn't add anything about this plant, there wasn't much to say. Then you go back out again. You can change the abundance. So you can pick one of these scales, 2 to 5, 6 to 20, etc. Or you can use the plus and minus ones to be more precise. Or you can just leave it as present, which is what I did for a plant. It's hard to count plants in most cases. You can add the stage. It doesn't have, oh, it's giving us one of these tips again. So you just click OK to get rid of those. It just has adult, pre-adult and other. So you may want to fill that in or not. For plants, none of those are really relevant. You can fill in the sex, so male, female, mixed. Mixed would be if you had a flock, say, of mallards, it was males and females. And then you can also add the identifier again if someone's giving you help identifying the species. And the last thing you can do on the app, this isn't essential, but you can add a photograph. So you click on the little camera down here. You can pick camera and actually take a live shot if you're in front of the plant and you're taking a photo of it there and then. Or you can choose gallery and navigate in your phone to existing photographs. So for this one, you do need to give it permissions to access your photos. So I navigated to a photo I'd taken earlier of the ivy-leaved toadflax, and you just click on it and it will appear down here. There we go. So everything's there. The who is the person who signed in. You can't change that on the app, but everything else is there. Then it briefly appears in pending, and then it goes over to uploaded. Say you're out in the field and there's no signal, it might sit in pending for a little while, but it will go over to uploaded once you've got signal. And you can see the record there, and you can click on it to see the details. The one thing that you can't do on the app is to make any amendments. So the way that we changed the species name or deleted a record on SEWBReCORD, you can't do that within the app. It says here, this record has been submitted and cannot be edited within this app. So what you would do is to log onto the website and make any amendments there. So it's fine to do that. Again, if you've made a typo or you've made a mistake, you can just log onto the website and make any changes that you need to do. Not sure how long we stay on this screen. And I show again here, quickly show you how fast it can be once you get the hang of it. So putting in a blackbird, start typing the name, it will appear. Click on that, click on the draft record. It's got the location grid reference. If you, for example, have come home in the evening and you want to change the location, you can do that. You just move around in the map, basically. We've added the site name there. You'll see that it has got a drop-down menu now. So once you've added it once, it will save it. So you're saving time each time. It gets easier because it's got saved locations for you. I shouldn't have paused it then, should I? So there we go, we're back out here. I didn't want to add a comment or any of these additional. We didn't have a photo, so I just hit upload in the top right, and the record has gone off, briefly appearing in pending and then being in uploaded. So you can see there, once you've got the hang of it, it can be really quick to use the app, and it can be a great way to get your records to us. So I'm going to share back to my presentation. So I know that was a lot of information to take in and sort of see, but again, we do have YouTube videos, tutorials showing you how to do this a bit more slowly that you can watch again in the future if you want to. Perhaps you didn't fancy either of those routes. There are other ways that you can send us records. So as I said, SEWBReCORD and the app are both iRecord products. They feed into the iRecord database. So it's fine to also use iRecord itself if you prefer. So say you travel around the country and you want to be able to enter your English records in the same place, just use iRecord to do that. The data gets to us in the same way. It just takes a little bit longer from iRecord. iRecord also has some other apps that you might want to use. They've got quite a nice one called Grasshoppers, which has a species guide built in, and then you can add a record as well in the same app. There are a couple of pieces of older software that you may have heard of, MapMate and Recorder 6. These are sort of predating internet recording, so they're specifically built for recording on your computer, but we don't really recommend them for new users because they are quite difficult to use and they do have an expense. They're not free. But if you do happen to already use either of those and want to get data to us, then just get in touch, and we're very happy to sort of sync up and get the data out of those products. The even more old school way of recording, obviously, was to use paper. So it might be that you've got loads of notebooks in a drawer somewhere. It is an awful lot of work to get the data out of paper records. So if you have got a big backlog like that, you might want to get in touch with us to see how to process it. But yeah, it does take an awful lot of staff time. So we do what we can, but we do have an awful big backlog of existing paper records that just exist, basically. And then if you don't fancy any of these sort of fancy online technologies, we're really happy to receive records in Excel. So I can send you this set spreadsheet with the columns that you would need to fill in. You can add records as and when, and just email it to us periodically, and we can get the data in really quick and easy that way as well. So that is another option for you. So briefly going to troubleshoot some potential hurdles that new people often come across. So I'll go over some technical issues, the challenges of identification, and some other common questions that we get asked. So technical issues. As I mentioned when showcasing, do use the same email address for the app and the website if you're going to use both. Just to sync your accounts, basically. Personally, I made the mistake of using a different email address for the two, and it is a bit of a hassle to combine them. So do use the same email address for both. If you don't get that initial email, do check your spam folder. We do quite often end up in spam folders. If it doesn't turn up even there, then just drop us an email. We can arrange for you to get access. I think that grid references did used to be quite a technical barrier in the past to recording, but I think as you've seen today, it's no longer something you need to worry about. Either the GPS in your phone will do it, or you can navigate on a Google map and create a grid reference. So not a thing to worry about anymore, really. And just to say that we are here to help. We're very happy to take on technical queries and to get you on your recording journey. So drop us an email anytime on info@SEWBReC.org.uk. And just to cover a little, species identification is a big topic. It can be the most challenging aspect of recording, but it's also very rewarding in itself. It's part of that learning journey that I talked about at the start. Just to say that there are guidebooks available for lots of groups, and it might be worth investing in these. If you're particularly interested in birds, for example, you might want to pick up a Collins Bird Guide. If you want to do moths, these are probably the ones to get. We have got quite a lot of knowledge in the team about which guides are the most appropriate to buy, depending on what you're interested in, but it can get expensive. This is just part of my personal collection of ID guides, so the cost can mount up if you're buying every book as it comes out, basically. So you may want to look at online resources, particularly when you're first starting out. So I've just picked a couple of examples. There are lots of other online resources, but these are a couple of good ones to start with. So the Flickr pages of Stephen Falk. He is a really good pollinator ecologist. He actually wrote the bee book that came out a few years ago. And he's got this amazing Flickr site with lots of images and descriptions of species, mostly pollinators, but he does do other things as well. And it can be it's a really good free resource that you might want to have a look at. And then also Nature Spot, that's a really nice website. It covers, again, lots of different species groups. They have this really handy system of traffic lights and these little camera things, so that indicates whether you can identify a species from a photograph, for example. And yeah, they cover lots of different species, so they can be a great starting point. And we do have help available on social media. So for example, we do have a Facebook group for SEWBReC recorders, and people will often post in there asking what a species is, and we have local experts that will help out where they can. Sometimes it's not possible, but they do what they can. And then in person, hopefully next year onwards, we will have field events and stuff, so you might be able to meet in person and ask questions then. And just a note to say that not all species can be identified from photographs. This is just an example of a small bug where you have to take the specimen, dissect it, pull out the genitalia, compare it to a key, that sort of thing. And obviously this isn't possible to do from a photograph. So please don't be offended if you've taken an amazing photograph of an insect, it's normally insects or fungi, and someone says they can't identify it from the photograph. It's just impossible to do from some species. It's not a reflection at all on your photography skills. And also just to say that there are experts that hang around on the iRecord system, and they will verify some, but not all of the records that you submit via SEWBReCORD and the app. So these are volunteers, they're experts that give their time up to go through the records that come in through this system and assess them and say whether they think they're correct or not. Again, don't be offended if somebody says that they can't accept your records. I've had it happen to me, and it's not a personal thing. It's just they're giving up their time to make sure the record is correct and is clean, basically. So they're just looking at the record, not you as a person. So yeah, so you'll get emails like this one when you send your records in, and you'll get little messages. You might get a message saying thank you very much from a recording scheme. That's quite nice to get. So, but again, not all records are looked at in this way. So we don't have any botanists looking at plant records. I don't think the bird records are getting looked at. It just depends on the experts available and whether they have time to do this. Just a couple more common questions. What should I record? We consider all species to be created equal at SEWBReC, so recording common stuff as well as rare stuff is greatly encouraged. You don't know what's common unless you have the data to back that up. How often should I record? It depends on how much time you have on your hands and what you're willing to do. But for repeat surveys, say, for example, you're looking at birds in your garden, we would say if you did that daily, it would become overwhelming for you and for us in terms of data. So monthly is normally the most frequent, we would say, for things like that. But if you're ever unsure, you can get in touch and ask us for different species groups. And should I enter old records and or help? I've got a big backlog. So we do like old records. We're very happy to get them. They add context to more modern records. They can be useful to show this. Maybe a location no longer holds that species, but it proves that it was suitable in the past. If you've got a big backlog, like I mentioned before, of paper records, what I would say to do is to start recording digitally from today onwards with your new records. Then once you've got into the swing of it, you can go back and look at those notebooks or whatever, decide whether it is something that you can personally handle. And if not, you can get in touch with us and we'll see what we can do to help you. And the final thing I'm going to do today is to show you Aderyn. So this is a data outgoing product website, and it's how you can view the records that exist for Wales. So I'm just going to pop over again to different screen. There we go. So there's the web address up there. And this is a joint Welsh product, so it's all the 4 record centres in Wales working together to create this website. And we use it to send out data to planners and to consultants and stuff. But we also have these public tools that are available to everybody to use. So they're called What's in My Area and Distribution Maps. So I'll show you what's in my area first of all. So you can basically pull up a species list of all the species that have been found in a 1 kilometre square. So you can either type in the grid reference if you know it, or more likely than not, you'll just want to put in your postcode and click go. And hopefully this will work. Here we go. So this has pulled out a species list from the database. So it says the following 4,051 records matched your search from 954 different non-sensitive species in the search area of 1 kilometre squared. And we can see here on the right in the little map the area that's included. Any sensitive species within your search area have been removed. You can view a list here. So things like a lot of raptors, we can pull up the list actually. So a lot of rare birds, some of the bigger mammals, beaver, not really get those down here, but bats, great crested newts, dormice, things that are very sensitive to disturbance, things that people might go out of their way to see or potentially even take eggs from, they're excluded just to ensure the safety of those records. But everything else is here in a list. So most 1 kilometre squares don't have this many records in, it's just that, again, I record a lot. We can see a whole list there. We can change the order by just clicking. So if we want to see all the birds, we can do that. And for each species, it gives you the name, it gives you the category, so that's how protected it is basically. It gives you the taxon group, the count, so that's how many times it's been recorded, when it was first recorded and when it was last recorded. So it can be interesting to see, for example, what the first record is. So there's some records in my square from 1977. You can see what the most counted thing is. So large yellow underwing, I'm not surprised at that. I get absolutely loads of those in my moth trap. So yeah, it can be interesting to see what has been found in the past and maybe say, oh, well, I want to see that. Maybe I'll try and find that myself. The other publicly available tool is distribution maps. So we click on this little search button here and you can fill in a common or scientific name. I'll just pop in the common name quickly. Search, And we can see here that it's found marmalade hopperfly for us. It's given us the Latin name. That's the total number of records in Wales, the category of how protected it is, the taxon group it's in, and then we can click on the arrow to get to a map. Which hopefully won't take too long to load. Oh, there we go. So this gives us a grid showing how many records there are in different locations. It's color coded, so you can see how many records there are. So, and then so this is a 10 by 10 kilometer square, each of these. And then if you want to see in more detail, you can click on each one. And it shows you the distribution in terms of 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer squares. So this is my square that I'm in. So you can hover over each one and see how many records there are. There's 5 there. They're probably all from my garden. There's a square down here with 87 in, so I guess somebody records them a lot in their garden. I need to pull my socks up. So yeah, this can be really useful if you're like wondering, you found something new and you're wondering how rare it is. This will give you an indication of that. So I'll pop back over to my presentation. So I know that was a lot of me talking. Hopefully you weren't too bored by that. These are some of the links of the things I've spoken about. I'll ask Sam to send these out via email as well, so don't worry too much about scribbling them down. But yes, does anyone have any questions?
Thanks, Elaine. That was really good. One question: how do you deal with sort of duplicate sort of entries? I was just thinking, for example, obviously we're doing some grassland surveys, so perhaps some of the surveyors may have already submitted records to you. But if I was to sort of summarise all the results and send them through again, would that be an issue? Can you pick up duplicates like that, or how does that work?
We always kind of think of it as a problem for us, not for you. Basically, we don't want to. We do have a deduplication process, so the records do go through that, and hopefully it will pull out any duplicates that come through like that. But yeah, we don't want to bother individual recorders too much with things like that. Like, send us your records and let us worry about whether someone else has duplicated it, basically.
Oh, okay. So just send it through, and you'll work out whether or not it's how valid it is. Yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you.